I think that should do it.
How are we doing?
Hey, very good.
Okay. All right. 1 second. Just give it some volume. And okay. So who we got on the call? We have our old friend Read AI. Hello, Read AI. I love you. And what looks like Kevin, or is that a person, or is that another AI?
That's be him.
All right. Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Okay. Always good to know how many real people and how many AIs we've got.
Just the one, I think, for no purpose. Is it the team? And I love the remote work. Is just the time zones are awful. We can finagle one weekend or one meeting a week.
Yeah. No, I look. Meetings are an old way of working. I mean, and there's an old joke about if you want to kill an idea, hold a meeting. So anyway, you're not going to get me to disagree on that. Anyway, let's talk. Okay, Mark, you called this baby. Shoot, how do you think I can help you? How do you want to do this?
Two sets of questions. The first is maybe the easier one. We've had a great year, and then it's just maintaining the growth going into next year, or do you have to basically prepare for a potential down year, and then the following year you'll be back on the upswing?
Sure. Okay, you want me to answer that question right now, or you want to?
Well, then the other one's about the equity linked notes, and it kind of ties in together because
that's more technical. Okay, so the thing is, growth. The thing is, you always have to look at what's behind the number, which is to say, like, is it the right kind of growth? Okay, so growth in a specific vertical is always much more valuable than growth across many verticals. So, for instance, if what you do is, just take an example, is incredibly useful to like supermarkets or something, that then is a more interesting kind of a company that you have like growth coming from different sorts of places. So you always have to dig behind the growth. And then there's also the law of nature, which is to say anything that can grow fast can collapse fast. So the right kind of growth, this is a bit like cholesterol in arteries. There is good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. So there's good growth and there's bad growth. And good growth is basically, how strong is your product market fit? Meaning, like if you guys disappeared, if you guys just decided to go live in a jungle in Southeast Asia, like would your customers literally come find you and say, no, we need you guys to exist? Or would they just go, well, we like those guys, but these other guys are, do exactly the same thing. And you don't want to get fast. You don't want to go like hard until you're kind of hard end, if you know what I mean. Which is to say, like, that you stay small as long as you possibly can, and strengthen your product, your moat, your defensibility. And then, because when you go to market, you have to start hiring. The kind of people you want to hire are the kind of people that want to see everything in place. These guys are on a clock and on a bonus schedule. So that's the first kind of answer in terms of like your number. I mean, I looked, numbers are numbers, right? But, you always have to say what's behind that. Like how many of that growth are people who literally, if you disappeared, would mount campaigns on Twitter for you guys to exist. And that's a tough question to ask anyone who's spent a lot of time working. But the breakout products, the Lovables, the Replets, the 11 Labs, like the all of these kind of guys, if they disappeared, there literally people would organize a search party to find them. And that's the game you have to be in. You have to be, so compelling that it's not just it does what I need it to do, but whatever. Or if you disappeared, would people send out search parties to find you? So that's the difference.
Right. Yes. I mean, I'll give you the whole backstory for our product. I know we chatted a while ago, and that was the beginning of the journey. And so our whole premise is gamified marketing.
Yeah.
But send businesses, or we send people into the business for cross-selling and just engagement with their community.
Yeah.
issue being, if it's an alcohol-related prize, it doesn't work in America because everyone drives, and there's no way to really utilize that reward.
Yeah.
So pivoted to the European market, and that was about when we met. So we had
Sure.
software, got feedback, and then iterated. And we're about a year and a half in, all organic, and it's going well. It's one of these things where we add value to businesses where every extra sale matters. The supermarkets are fit yet because they want 10,000, 100,000 people a month, which we'll do eventually. But right now, it's about the one extra person who finds a business that connects with their personality, and then they become a loyal, lifelong customer. So from that angle, there are people who would be very sad if we went away because we helped find the lifelong client, so to say.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I say that for effect because it really is a thing, it really is a thing that because so many people, so many categories, like you have a category leader or a runaway guy, and that the other people, are thereabouts, but they're not the runaway guy. So, this is high performance stuff. This is absolutely this is a winner take all kind of stuff, so you have to have that mentality. But okay, so that's kind of, so like, did I answer your question then in terms of like, your growth? I mean, have you identified, can you break your growth down into different components, or is it coming from all over the place? I mean, do you have like a typical customer who literally can't live without what you do?
It would be the small mom and pop business because they're the ones who are struggling for every sale or fighting for every sale. And then we provide a fun, unique way for people to find their business without having to pay for the overpriced ad search engine stuff like that. So this is those creative little shortcuts to get exposure. So those are the clients that really, really like what we do. And we just have the typical metrics of usage and downloads and then engagement from a revenue stream perspective.
Yeah.
I don't think so. These are just the deck model that shows the revenues. It doesn't have there's some of the app stuff.
Sure. No,
Actually,
that's okay. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about two things always, and this is sort of where we are now, which is number one is like, as you say, do you have customers who would send out a search party who are so addicted to your product that they literally can't live without it? And then the second is, can you automate it going forward? Like, which is the game that all of us are in, which is to say, can you move from, like, how dependent is the business on you? How dependent is sort of a Google AdWords model where you never meet a person, which is ultimately what you have to get to. You have to get to a situation whereby, and that involves an investment in technology. It involves, putting in rules and stuff like that. And but that's ultimately, I mean, that's what Europe doesn't do well, which is that Europe over indexes on people and under indexes on technology. So what you have to do is basically, you in the beginning you do stuff that doesn't scale to understand the customer's need, but then you have to create a kind of a rules-based non-person thing that can scale exponentially. So like how near, can you codify, can you take yourself out of the process, and or how dependent is it on the founders and the founding team?
at this point, it's dependent in the sense that we do the cold calling for businesses because our model is based on so
Yeah.
buying a blanket sense doesn't make sense because we always joke that if all the reward cases are here in London, but the core user base is in Chicago, no one wins. So this point in time is actually very dependent because we're just scaling. Once we're at the critical mass where it's feasible to buy ad space and just kind of grow in that capacity, we can step away and let it be self-sufficient. But at this point, just given that we have to go source businesses, no one does what we do. So there's no point of reference, which is annoying, but also it's how you know you're going down the right path.
Yeah.
And then it just takes a little bit of time for people to get behind the model because we have to go back every so often, host a little event, walk everyone through how it works. And then once that happens, they're kind of on board for the long term. It's just a slow, if we can like onboard one business a week, it's a good week.
Yeah. I know, but that's again is something that you have to, like, I never like to use the word startup I always like to use the word pre-scale up, that you're kind of thinking from the beginning, like, and I don't think there's any, like, this is the big difference between a startup and a scale up. Like, it's not in any sense a gradual thing. It's literally going from land to water. It's like just a different environment, and you stay on land for as long as you can. But when you go into water, because everything is much more complicated. So you have to be thinking in terms of how do I get this thing to sort of get out, to take the people part out of it and like automate it. And that can very often involve simplification decisions. Only simplicity scales, complexity kills. And if you ask me the single greatest reason why people don't scale, I would say that they have a number of experiments, but they won't double down on the core stuff. That there's always this kind of part of it that, like, one customer who was very nice to them likes, and they just won't kill that. And ultimately you have to double down on what works and leave behind the other stuff. And the large multi-scaler companies, whether it's like Amazon or whatever, or bloody Instagram, they'll essentially have one product that does a small number of things. And that's, that's kind of the way you need to think about it as well. Like, so whenever there's, and that, companies, a lot of them, they don't die. They're reluctant to make a bet on something, and you will reach a point, every company has had to make a bet on something. And that if that bet works, then you have a momentum behind you. And if that bet doesn't work, then then it didn't work out. And I did catch your email to say, like, this is your fourth or fifth business, so that you know that. But still you need to that's the thing, that you always need to be looking to, like, what's the bet I can make. And that's why a lot of founding teams have one absolutely crazy person, one person who's just absolutely certifiably crazy. And then they have a sort of a relatively normal person who can put that into it. But, if someone was to say to you, like, how can you 10x something in 5 years? Very often the answer is it's not possible to 10x something in 5 years. It's only possible to 10x something in 6 months by making a crazy bet. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like that's when people think in terms of 10xing, that's organic. That's not entrepreneurship. That's like a kind of a company that has fixed plant and something like that. Like, startups should always be thinking of 10xing, but 10xing in 6 months by making a crazy bet on something.
It ends up being the J curve growth factor.
Yeah, that's it. Like, but like, you have to have, I've seen this, like, if you go back and study Snapchat or whatever, they literally had one guy who was just came into the office for an hour and he would just say crazy stuff, and he ended up being right, which is to say, like, and like there was no real sense to it otherwise. He just came in and, well, like this is this fucking crazy thing that's probably not going to work, but it turned out that some of the stuff he proposed did work. And
What ours are less crazy in the traditional sense. It's more of we've got a very, I want to say, like, easy to iterate model where we started with just leaderboards, like scoring people indirectly through leaderboards. The next intuitive step is multiplayer with real in-time competition, or in real-time competitions. And then from there, you can kind of create more dynamic games, because the games right now mimic arcade games in the sense that they're very simple, fun to play, but after you played for a week or so, you've kind of done everything the game.
Yeah, you've achieved the challenge. Yeah, I get that.
So the next thing is just, if you and I, let's compete right now for this gift card, that adds a whole, not gone down that road yet. So the thing is, I'll take it back a step. We got lucky in the sense that our model struck a chord here, and we've achieved really decent growth in the year with all organic marketing. It's just how to keep that going next year, and it's the multiplayer play. We've already reached out or had partners.
Organic. When you move from organic to paid, the problem is you can't go backwards. Like, that's, once you go paid, you have to stay paid. It's It's like, and that when you go off paid, like everything, it just really messes up your KPIs. So it's like,
We're
yeah,
not going to stay as organic as long as humanly possible.
yeah, no, I agree with that. That's and as you say, like the model startups are slow, quick. Like there's no slow, medium, quick. Like you're either like keeping it really tight, keeping it, whatever, and then you go for it. Like there's nothing in the, like, you do not ease. I mean, you literally, you keep things tight, you keep things organic, you keep things, and then until you reach a point where, you, as I say, you literally have customers who will send out a search party for you if you disappear. People for whom literally talk about you at parties. You have that level of engagement, and then when you have that, then it's just a matter then of kind of once, if you can make a group of people incredibly happy, then when more people will find out about it, then those people will also be made incredibly happy. But where it goes wrong is if you have people who are kind of happy, and then when you make them, then more people find out about it, but are not incredibly happy, then that gives rise to all sorts of customer service, bad installations, like sort of a lot of work for not a lot of benefit. So that's when you have to kind of be careful about it. But the good management is simplicity. Design is taking things away. It's not adding things. Adding things is consultancy. Like entrepreneurship is taking things away. And that's the mentality that you kind of have to use.
When you say taking things away, is it safe to say if you're extending something or adding, I don't know what the right word is, like evolving something you have, is that an acceptable addition versus?
No, I'm a bit reluctant to it, because then that starts a new cycle. Like, I put it like this: if you're selling lemons, right, and lemons are going well, instead of adding oranges, you get a better kind of lemon.
What, you start selling lemonade, is that acceptable?
Yeah. No, but you get, like, the thing is, like, a lemon isn't a lemon, right? There are, I don't know, Spanish lemons, French lemons, California lemons. Do you understand? Like, there are lemons who are, like, in other words, you go deeper into the lemonness rather than deeper into the citric fruitness,
Okay. Oh, that makes perfect sense, actually.
Do you understand? Like, so, and that's where people go. They go like, oh, if people buy lemons, then let's sell oranges and limes. And you're like, no, people want lemons, but they want a better kind of lemon. And and that's kind of the definition of it. And so you if lemons are working, instead of saying we've cracked lemons, let's move to oranges, you say no, let's get even. What's the best kind of lemon is in our tree in Iraq or in Iran, or some up a mountain in Iran. Let's go get those lemons. Like that's the way you think. And then those lemons make customers who didn't think it was possible to be made any happier, turns them into literally like cult like behavior. Like that, then, because they were happy, they didn't think they could make any happier. And those become your word of mouth customers. Those become your literally addicted people. Because if you have somebody who thinks it couldn't get any better, and then you make it better, those people then become like, it's cult like behavior. It's word of mouth. It's obsession. Like all of those kind of things. And that's kind of what you have to, if you think of all the great products, all the great consumer products, that was it. Like literally they had people going, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you using these shoes? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you, using this, whatever, wearing this kind of coat? Like, and that is, what you need to aim for. And that, and you understand that by, as I say, making customers who didn't think it was possible to be made any happier, to somehow find a way. Literally, like that they almost like video games. They stop talking to their family. They lock themselves in a basement and play it for 24 hours. Like that level of obsession is what you have to kind of aim for. Yeah. And that's That's what the great companies do. They literally, like, it's almost like drug addiction. You know, they steal in order to do. Anyway, I'm exaggerating, but do you understand what I mean? That you need to get the best kind of lemon, not oranges and limes or something.
We're very much sticking with the lemons. I guess and to beat this example to death because it's really resonating with me. We've started sourcing different types of lemons through the game. So we started with just, and then we've branched into different type of games, puzzles, strategy, etc. So in that regard, I'd say we've found the different types of lemons to sell through our shop. It's not, do you start offering derivative products like lemonade, so to say? Or
No, I'm reluctant to that. Again, because there's only so much you can do at your stage. You know, until like unless you hit up a barrier, like, you know, if you're some sort of barrier, like there's only whatever 6 billion people in the world, or if you're selling to women, there's only a certain number of women, or like unless you hit a barrier, like a kind of a, then you shouldn't, you just can keep going deeper, you know, like until the stage where literally every person who could possibly want this or use this is using it, then you still have growth to run, and you got to run that experiment all the way to the end, you know, and you know, all of that, like not just the literally the, you know, you start then getting into metrics that you don't just have a user, you have like, does it pass what's called the toothbrush test? Like, do they use it every day, you know? For how long? You know, again, you just start getting deeper and deeper into it until it literally you understand obsessional behavior. You know, like, do they use it in the morning? Do they, like you say, in the commute or whatever? You know, you start to really understand that metrics, and that's often why the people who do these kind of things, there's a very good book called Hooked, which talks about you know, how to drive obsessive behavior, and you know, that's one of the things. Like, he talks about Borat. I don't know, you remember the movie Borat? No, do you remember the movie Borat? Like, what made it a great movie was that, like, the scene went on, like, even when you couldn't watch it anymore, the scene would still go on for like 3 or 4 minutes. Like, the songs didn't just have one verse, they had 10. When he was like wrestling, you know, in the lobby, it wasn't just 2 minutes, it was 10, you know. Like, that was the driver, like, that you keep going deep until there's no deep to go, and that's what often people pull away.
Okay.
And that's where you get these, you know, like the Netflix people say, you know, they insomnia is not their problem, you know, like if their users are complaining that, oh, I'm staying up all night watching watching Narcos or whatever, Netflix to say that's not my problem, you know. That's what we aim for.
Oh yeah. Okay, well, along that lines, I think that's we're doing that in a sense. This is the other screen I wanted to share, is just our kind of offerings. We've got like 20 games at the moment, and they're all just different types. But again, the main, I would guess to call it like a handicap, is that it's all single player or you compete indirectly through leaderboards. So tying in that multiplayer feature would be the next thing, because we see it being something where you would just challenge someone at the bar or at the shop in real time for.
I have to say, 20 games worries me, you know.
Well, but different categories though. That's the thing. It's just not.
But I'm wondering what, like, again, I'm wondering, like, again, and I'm just totally spitballing here, but like whether you can combine them into one game, you know, like.
Well, the whole point is this is not meant to be a time sink. It's like you've got 5 minutes where you're waiting for the bus. I'm on the train. And you play the game, and it basically is arcade themed in the sense that there is no win criteria. If you complete the level, it'll reset with like a little bit less time or a little bit less life, and it will get incrementally harder until you cannot win as a human being because the reaction times and stuff like that. But
Sure. But I mean, I get that, and that's fine. But I just worry, like, you know, again, Facebook has 4 products. You know, they have WhatsApp, Instagram. Like, you know, they don't have like dilute. They don't ask people. They make choices for people rather than asking people to make choices. And there is a saying that human beings are incapable of more than 7 choices. If you show people a list of anything that has more than 7 items, they're incapable of making that choice because they instead of making the choice, they worry about the 19 they didn't pick. So I do think, like, I don't know whether you like whether this ends up that you if you could sort of consolidate them into one game, or like, I don't know. I'm just like that. I need to see more detail, but I like lack of choice, like, and you see the lovables and these kind of people, like you make choices without feeling that they're choices. It literally leads you in one direction, and
So you're right in this, what we do in this regard. So it's sort of, we joke, it's the mothership app. This is the that tethers to all the stores and all the games. If you know where to look, you can see the catalog of everything.
Yeah.
And it's not what someone sees. When you scroll through this app, you see 3 games at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of help people funnel down to what they're trying to do. If you're a gamer, you want the choice or you want the variety. So there are all the little filter menus so you can find exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But for a person, you see this app where this is the only thing that's on our business cards or websites, and then it funnels
I
you.
also worry about like supporting 20 apps and like game playing within them. It does seem kind of like, again, it goes away to my theme of obsession. Like 20. It's hard, like having 20 children. You you can't kind of give them all the love you want to give them. But anyway, I'm not here to like.
100, right? It's one of those things where the product is traffic. We facilitate through the games. If it was the one game, it would appeal to one person, and then people would kind of get tired of it after a week. Having the variety lets us cycle in games on like a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
But I just think you need to, like, I don't know, there needs to be some sort of like way in which it all works together, like a town of games or something like that, almost like a theme park, where you have like areas and zones. You have whatever, you have the Wild West, and then you have the whatever. I mean, that's just the thing that would slightly worry me. I mean, you could say, even, you go on Amazon.com, like they have lots of little areas, but it doesn't feel like that, and it feels as if they're connected. And I know this is just something to kind of think about, that you want to have a way in which one leads to the other, and that they have a connectedness to them. But anyway, I don't want to, like, you're doing a lot of good stuff here, so I don't want to go negative on you. So you're going to ask me about loan notes then, yeah?
Sorry about that. The lost connection on the other device.
Okay.
I was going to say that we do. So again, I've been critiqued for this all the time. And there it's back.
I think I lost you.
That's me. Sorry. I need to refine the pitch. So there's just a lot to talk about, and I don't focus on the right thing.
The pitch market, just get someone excited about one thing and one thing only, and the rest of it kind of, once they get excited about that, then the rest of it kind of sells.
That's frustrating. I was going to show the other screen and walk you through the app, just so you could see like.
Okay, what's going on here?
I think that's me. Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, there's like some funny stuff going on, but anyway, I can hear you now.
Yeah, that's my connection. A little wonky.
Okay, don't worry. There's echoes and things, but I can put up.
Yeah. Okay, well, A for effort there.
Yeah. No, the issue with the pitch, Mark, is the following: that you don't have to pitch everything. It's not like this all encompassing. You pitch your strongest point. Like, it's like a billionaire who pitches. Like they just say, "Hi, I'm a billionaire." Like they don't mention the fact that any of the other stuff. You pitch your solid point, which is to say, like, whatever. Right now, there are 1,000 people somewhere playing my game, something like that. Like now, and that number 6 months ago, there were 100 people doing it. You just pitch the strongest thing repeatedly. So it doesn't have to be like this all-encompassing thing that goes from A to B to C. You just hit them with the strongest thing you've got. And then then that gets their attention. And then once you have their attention, you get them to ask questions. And then, because if there's no questions, you always know you're getting nowhere if there's no questions, like that's the absolute killer. So what you need to do is just hit them with the strongest point. Like whatever, right now, there's 1,000 people who, spend 20 hours a day or something like that. Like just one killer thing. And then the rest of it kind of then will work out in terms of questions. But that's how you sell it.
I think that's my issue of I've assumed everyone reads the stuff I'll send over. So I'll restart. We've grown 2,000% year on year from our organic growth alone.
I'll tell you, Mark, the thing about communicating with investors as well, it's not that they don't actually read it, but it all starts to kind of sound the same. It's not undifferentiated. If you eat cheeseburgers every day, it gets harder to understand the difference between a good cheeseburger and a bad cheeseburger, and also investors are trained to ask themselves what's not being said. Like that's like everyone, most people who pitch you have they have the up and to the left and whatever, but like you're kind of, you're looking for what's he not telling me? Like your CTO is part-time, or you're always trained to kind of like to latch onto like what's not being said rather than what's being said. Whereas it's the glass half full, glass half empty thing. But the other thing is the data just kind of like it just washes through, because you if you have 10 pitches a day, they all start to look the same, and you're all the time. I mean, there's a sort of a joke that the best pitch is, some sort of like human thing about like, I was orphaned as a child, and do you understand what I mean by that? Like it's a sort of like that someone tells me we had to escape in the middle of the night because my father was whatever, like that kind of stuff is is more compelling than the kind of like it's my fourth company and we have 2,000 users. The guy who tells you that, the guy tells because so many great companies, it's all about the individual's drive to succeed rather than the actual performance on the paper.
By far and away our story.
Yeah.
10 times over, but it's one of those like that would take a whole hour and a half just to get through the backstory.
Well, I'm actually going to be in London towards the end of the month, so and the 20 whatever it is, the 29th of you're in London, right? Where are you?
Yeah. Right now in the Strand area.
Perfect. Okay, so I mean it's a month away, but we can I'll tell you when I'm arriving and stuff like that, and we can we can definitely we can meet when I'm here. But yeah, it's so you were going to ask me about loan notes or something like that.
Yeah, so it's like the thing is like now the thing that's not being said is like most of us are part-time or flex work, because the joke is until we can pay you more than your current job, obviously put this second. So it's now just at that junction where if we find the right big ticket investor, we can pivot everyone to full-time and hire a few more people. So we're trying the equity linked note approach for the twofold, raise the funds, but then also to like help with liquidity.
Yeah.
More than your thoughts on linked notes, or do you?
Very dangerous. It's really dangerous. I tend to say loan notes are kind of, if you're failing a company, the company is failing and it's your last big hurrah, it's because that's what a loan note is for, really, because otherwise you're just deferring equity and
I see where you're coming from. I guess in our mind, it was because we've got a few of these revenue streams that bring in little chunks here and there. We would use that as a way to back someone's investment and then also give them equity at the same time, so that it helps put like notes or stock into the private market. Or is that just not what you're thinking is a good idea?
Yeah, like the point is it can make sense from where you are, but you just see there's so many pitches out there of people who are just so unbelievably kind of determined, full-time, that like your thing comes across in that kind of in a sort of it just doesn't come across as it's the ham and eggs, like the
non-committal kind of.
yeah. No, like I being honest with you, there's not to
no. That's good to hear, because in my mind it was like, yeah, we're giving you two things, whereas they're only giving you equity. Like, we'll give you interest plus the equity.
Yeah, it's not really like the way this works is that you live like in an apartment and you eat noodles, and you work full time, and
we got that locked down. That is for sure.
Yeah. Failure is not an option. That's what people want to hear, and there are people kind of, especially in the Silicon Valley sense, like that's how everybody is, like and that's always the criticism of Europe, which is to say that people are committed, kind of, but like that, but they're not.
While it suits them, they're committed.
Yeah. I know that's what I mean, and that's the thing. So I mean, I the only thing I could sort of say to you, and this is a kind of like, which is just sort of like, go do the equity raise and try to kind of avoid specifics in terms of like how full-time you are, and like that's a difficult thing to kind of like, that's a difficult.
Well, I would say I am very, very full-time.
Yeah.
It's more of, we make something called a flex work available to people. Because like, if you want game experience, you want to do these things, but you've also got proper commitments, you can work with us on a flex capacity, which is if you don't do anything this week, you're not penalized for it. Obviously, don't make that the only thing you do. You're just calling in sick every week. But it's more of if you've got like exams for uni or you've got other things to do, like. So that's where.
Why would like then the question the investors ask, purely because the other people that they're looking at are committed and full-time and obsessed and all of that, which is to say, like, what is it about what you're doing that you can't find somebody who's willing to give up what other else they do?
I give up everything already. This is my way to just grab 10 hours from someone.
I get that, and you're totally that. But I'm saying, what is it about you and your project that means you can't get another person to be as equally committed, or like that's the question they ask, which is to say that every great founder has been able to convince other people to give up what they're doing and to become full-time co-founder, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, you really because people present well on camera, but like it turns out, are you just good on camera, and then off camera you're an asshole, like that, like that's the thing that they're thinking, right? Because that some people are like that, that they're in the meeting, they're super good and they look very agreeable and look kind of thing, but then they can't get anyone to work with them, because when they're off camera, they're just a complete asshole, and nobody wants to work with them. So, I do think that you're, and use the word of like, kind of, you need to go to people and literally ask them for help, and sort of like Y Combinator don't take solo founders, they just on that basis, because they say, like, if you can't get one other person to kind of give up whatever else they have to go on their journey, then you won't be able to build a team. And if you can't build a team, then you're not going to go anywhere,
Yeah, I guess, well, it's one of those things where I've not wanted to, like, we haven't really need to make, like, people have not had to make that commitment yet, just given where we automate enough stuff that as long as I can commit a full-time thing, it's that next pivot where people are going to have to kind of.
Yeah, totally. And that's not saying you've done anything wrong up to now. I'm just saying that, like, the idea of what I expect to see is basically like 3 people full-time, and you got obviously a large, because of all the work you've done up to now, you get to hold on to like whatever 90% of the equity, and then you have like 2 5s or something like that in terms of 2 other founders. So that's what you get out of it. But you do, if you want to, things like loan notes, I mean, I wouldn't give you I wouldn't give you a low note now.
I didn't realize it was like the death throw kind of play.
Yeah, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is find co-founders, find someone who is willing to go on the journey with you and is excited by what you've done, and then with those co-founders, literally then go raise a first round. That's
We actually do have those people. I don't know. I think it's the time zone thing or the fact that we're not in the same office all the time. Like our strategic partner is a development firm in Surat, India, and they've been with us for like 2 years, 3 years at this point. 3 people full time, and then we have one person here that's part time, but it's because their focus is on the sustainability stuff for the firm. So like they've set it all on autopilot. So there are people that are here in a full time capacity. I think it's just literally the fact that we're not all in the same space. It does tend to be
well that's the issue you have to resolve. You know, because that really is, in all the great companies. If I'm looking at 10 1-hour calls a day, and I have and I'm trying to, there's only enough money in the fund to invest in 2 out of those 10 companies. I'm just, you've given me a reason not to even look at what you've done, because like the team, whether the criteria are like team is always the big one. And like, I'm expecting to see 3 guys, and I'm expected to see that one of you does product, one of you does money, and one of you does technology or something like that. And that's what I'm expecting to see, because that's generally what I'm seeing from the other people.
We do have that. Actually, it's my pitch stuff that needs to be refined a bit, because
I'm not so sure. I mean, people say that, but I'm not like. Yeah, again,
it's the time zones and the stuff like that. Like, we work really well together. I think it's just because we're across 3 countries at the moment. I'd say it's one of those things where this amount of time with remote, it would have fizzled had it not been a good fit. It's one of these things where we kind of relay race it. So the time zone's off by 8 hours. Like, I will work right up until their morning, pass off the things, and then we meet once a week for a full.
That's Mark. That seems to me like that's very good in terms of getting the thing together and getting early pilots and stuff like that. But I would go as far as to say to you, and again, I'm not being rude, that
please,
you literally should. I don't know whether this is a Britishism, but in British English, we say the word, you should shaft. You should literally rug pull your partners. I mean, and I say that to you because that is the mentality of the other people I speak to, which is to literally say, these people, even though they've been working with you and all of that, that you should a Mark Zuckerberg or an Evan Spiegel or a Bill Gates or whatever, they would just rug pull these guys, and it's my job.
I believe in the long-term. I'm a goalkeeper, by the way. So I'm from the sports world, but I'm also the guy who has to sit there, and I can never win the game, but I sure as hell can lose it. And so having people that you can count on in that capacity
totally get that. But I totally get that. But we're in a competitive environment, and the customer doesn't care. The customer doesn't care about your honor or your glory. By the way, I'm a goalkeeper as well. As you
feel the pain.
Yeah, no, I understand that very much, but I do understand that, ultimately you need to raise capital to hire a sales team, to do all of that stuff like that, and the way in which the industry plays, they want 3 marks. That's what they want, and they want that you're in the office doing stuff on whiteboards. That's what they expect to see. That's your Revoluts and your 11 Labs and your all of these people. That's kind of what they expect to see. And I again, when I look at the origin stories of a lot of companies, they've done something like this in the beginning to get going, but then they rug pulled,
Yeah.
So you need to go to some sort of gaming firm. You fly up to Edinburgh and grab Take-Two person, or you need to like break into Activision, or something like, or that's kind of what you need to do. And you sort of need to say, and it's a compelling offer. Like, it's a compelling offer, but like that's kind of what you need to do. And I don't.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I've not had to like think about it in that light yet.
You need to find like, and like, nice guys don't build great companies. What can I say to you? I am. We all like to try and be a nice guy, but nice guys don't build great companies.
Oh, don't worry. I have the killer instinct. That's for sure.
No, but it's really, that's kind of what I mean. You need to go to someone and say, you need to go to someone and say like, okay, we've put the work into it, and we have to go to a next stage, and that requires this. And the people that have been on the journey with me up to now have been, you can give them equity, you can give them like 2% or something like that, or you can do that kind of stuff, but you can't go forward with this structure. You just can't. Like, that's
fair to say. That's really good to hear.
It's not fundable, it just isn't fundable. And so it's either a hobby project, it's either a kind of a like post-economic thing for but if you want to create a company that's got the chance of like 100 million in sales, then you're going to have to rug pull. You're going to have to go find some guy and say, look, we and it's great because you can be very specific about what you're doing. You're not kind of saying like, oh, I have this idea, whatever. You're like, this is the thing, right? And the I need you to take over this development and have a team that can kind of like, that can, I mean, even there's all sorts of other stuff that they can do in terms of the platform, in terms of like, there's ways in which they can tidy up stuff, introduce kind of, even pulling together all the apps, like the like Lord of the Apps kind of stuff, that from many becomes one, that kind of stuff. But you're in a great position to go to someone, and it's an attractive, because the hardest thing with convincing anyone to come on board is that you're trying to get them to come on a journey, but you actually don't know where you're going. Whereas you have a relatively good idea about where you're going, and you like, I just need someone to grab this and run with it. We're going to try and consolidate the apps. We're going to have our own platform, and we're going to have our dedicated resources. And then we can then go raise clean,
proper pedal to the metal.
Yeah. We can go raise a kind of a clean, we can do a clean round, which has unencumbered capital. Loan notes have all sorts of conditions to them as well. All sorts of reporting requirements.
Don't worry, I've purged that from my mind already. I didn't realize.
Yeah. No. Your job is, your job is to just get really, you just have to get really mercenary about the whole thing, and you need to just go to someone and say, like, I need some, the company isn't fundable unless we have like 2 to 3 founders and full time on the project who can kind of who can tell you exactly what's going on with the company, as opposed to like people who are doing a job and being paid for a job. So that's what you got to do. Like, team is, especially in a startup. So, but it's attractive because you can tell the people what it is you're doing. And then I think you probably need to, over time, like merge the apps and try and kind of really get like, what is the most, like, exponentiality means that, like, if whatever 20 million people are on one app is the same as 1 million people on 20 apps,
Yeah.
So like that's the thing. So, I think it was fine to have these other apps, but yeah, you need to kind of really consolidate down on it's kind of
think of it just like swapping stuff out on a menu, though. I do have to lean on we'll probably not just keep making games, so to say, but
yeah. But if you look, it's funny you say that, because actually maybe I'm just reacting to a conversation I had, but menus in general are going, like, are simplifying, that's what the Chipotle guy who was brought into Taco Bell or whatever, like that was his big innovation. Like the Starbucks guy is like, I just want a fucking cup of coffee, you know, like I don't want a mocha double peppuccino, you know, like it just got out of control. And the reason actually it got out of control it was number one was the complexity of knowing what you wanted. And number two was the complexity of then actually making it, you know, like most people can be shown how to make a cup of coffee, you know, but when you have to do this like double frappo cheese, you know, cremo thing, like that was then the complexity.
Specialized skill set just to make a coffee.
Yeah. So that's the point, that you have to kind of like work out what the really compelling parts are and go deep in that, like rather than the other stuff. It doesn't mean you have to like disappear them, but you have to start making bets. You have to make bets that compound, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the hardest thing to do, because as human beings, evolutionary, our brains have evolved not to make choices, right? Because the survival instinct is not that, right? The survival instinct is very much, you know, don't depend on one thing, on one food source, on one, you know, whatever. Like instead, we have evolved to not have dependencies. But that's the reality of entrepreneurship, you know, which is to say you have to make bets on stuff. You have to take, you know, like tough decisions and double down on stuff. And that's why the great entrepreneurs do this without even thinking. You know, it's not even they don't ever lose sleep about doing something like this, because it's just, this is what's needed to take the business forward. And they just do it, you know.
Yeah, I would say thank you for the two things, like the note thing for opening my eyes, and then the second for the founder insight. Yeah. It does make sense now that I've heard it out loud. This is like, I don't want to say that's the bet I have to make, but that's the thing I have to go do next. Just, to see it kind of grow. That's how the growth gets maintained next year, is find two other people to keep the same energy.
But the bad stuff as well, you know, like with your partners and things like that. I think that's kind of a direction you need to go to, and I think while you know, that you may need to, you know, it's not a nice thing to say or to do. And if I look back over my own career, there were things that if I had been a bit more, you know, I definitely lost out on some things by not being sufficiently cold-blooded, you know, because it's just not in my personality, to be fair. But what I learned after that was always have someone on my founding team who is cold-blooded, you know. And I have, like, in my businesses, I have one guy, he's literally a sociopath, you know. I don't, like, we're not friends, we're business partners.
You're work associates.
Yeah, we're absolutely not. Well, I mean, there is of course respect, but we're not friends. Like, I mean, absolutely not. You know, he does literally, like, what he does at his weekends are all things that I have no interest in, and but there's a respect there, and he knows, I know what he brings, and he knows what I bring. And you have to get surrounded by those people.
How do you find these people? Is it one of those things where you've just like shortlisted a couple companies and you just walk into the lobby and say, I need to talk to Bob because no.
I mean, it's, you know, you always have, like, you know, you write down your network, like what are the last 50 people you emailed about anything, right? And then you just go through them and you ask them, who do they know? Like, you know, how do you hire people? You always go, who's the best techie, you know, who's the best whatever, you know. It's just that you have to enter, and this is when you see, like, scale-up entrepreneurs, when they get together, they're really good. You know, who's the best tax lawyer, you know, who's the best whatever. Like, it's not like, oh, look at my product, you know. It's like, who's the best, you know, they just, whatever their problems are, they just speak to each other about it. But you do have to, like, asking people for help is actually a superpower, you know. Just go to people and say, look, I'm good at this, but you know, like, as you say, like, you know, goalkeepers are so different to strikers. You know, they say that like, all of the strikers in the world all come from, like, Latin America, because they're just cold-blooded. You know, it doesn't like Spain doesn't have strikers because Spain just wants to, like, pass the ball and do nice things, you know. whereas the cold-blooded, well, I guess with one Norwegian exception, but the rest of them are just kind of just they've grown up that way on the streets. Just you do whatever you can to get the ball in the net.
Yeah.
And Spanish football now is just people passing it around. It's like
we're all just here to have a good time.
Yeah. We're all just here to be friends. Everyone gets time in the ball and pretty patterns and whatever. And then you have like they think of people like Luis Suarez or Aguero, these kind of guys who like.
If I don't score this goal, I don't eat tonight. All right, well, I guess I'm going to score the goal.
Yeah, no, but that's the point. But it's not a comment on you. It's just a comment on that there has to be someone around who can smell blood,
It's more just not having heard this from someone before about the founding team being the limitation. Because I'm a tech guy. I'm a numbers guy. Like, all right, these trends are fantastic. We're crushing it, blah, blah, blah. What's the sticking point? And now that we've spoken, I can see that is probably what it is. Yeah. And so that alone has been very, very insightful. So
I got another call coming up, Mark, that I got to run to. I hope this has been a benefit. Be feel to send me any follow-ups or anything. And I'm in London at the end of the month, and I'll tell you where I'll be, and you can come by.
Yeah, grab a coffee or something, and then I need to.
Yeah, no, I
your opinion on best people for.
You just gotta get the word out. You gotta get the word out. But team is definitely a thing. Like it's a Y Combinator don't take solo founders for a reason, which is say that like unless you have and I think it's obviously easier at this stage because you can show them exactly what you're doing. But yeah, you just got to go find those people, and then I think that will completely change people's perception towards you. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, it's been good to speak with you. Okay, we'll be in touch.
As well. Take care, Joe. Bye.
Bye-bye.